Hey everyone, welcome to our next weekend project. What we've got here is a little 305 Chevy that I picked up a couple of years for a S10 that I was going to build for my wife. I stumbled on a nice little S10, good body, it had been lowered, it was half torn apart, the engine was blown up, so I was going to build her a little V8 S10 extended cab for running to and from town because she likes stuff with a little bit of scamp to it. So along the way I acquired a Turbo Hydro 700R4 transmission, and I acquired this 305 Chevy. It's from a 1984 Chevrolet pickup truck, and I didn't pay a lot for it, but it ran really good. It had 90,000 miles on it, more or less. Ran it up, listened to it. I was sitting in the frame of the truck with all the front end sheet metal cut off, and did a hot compression test. She came in at 140 pretty much across the board. Oil pressure was right up, so I picked it up. Well, by the time I got it home and a friend of mine came to visit, he fell in love with the S10, and he offered me a number that I couldn't refuse for the S10 because he had a big block and a TH400 he wanted to put in it to build a drag car. So we made a deal, and I wound up with an XS 305 Chevy. So it's been pickled properly and turned over regularly. It's been in the shop hanging on the engine stand while I've been figuring out what to do with it because I don't have a project car that'll fit right now. So it's a good time to show you how to detail an engine. Now, sometimes if you're building a project like I was, and you can get a really good deal on a used engine that checks out well, like I checked this one out, it makes sense just to use the used engine. You know, it wasn't a high performance application really. It was just going to be a neat little grocery getter ride, and with the overdrive it would have got good gas mileage. But circumstances changed. I made a few bucks and wound up with an extra engine. So we're going to start the process of detailing this engine as a weekend project. Now it's going to take a couple days, so we're going to start on Friday night and we're going to go through till we're done. And when it's finished, it'll be ready to drop into whatever we want to put it into when the right project comes along. So what have we done so far? Took it out of the vehicle, and I'll be honest, kind of hacked it out because we were in a rush and the guy who had it really didn't care how it came out. So we left behind a mess, and never washed it. I normally don't clean up an engine until I'm going to use it because you don't want to get water inside it, things like that. So we've got to get rid of the crap. And to get rid of the crap, that means getting rid of the excess hoses. We've got to get the accessories off. We've got to get all of this pulled apart. The excess wiring's got to be gone. We've already started the process. I built a cap for the carburetor out of a piece of ready rod and an old ice cream bucket so it fits tightly. Use black tape around the bottom to seal it, and inside I've got a rag covering the carburetor cushion around it so any moisture that does make it through won't get inside the carburetor. We've pulled the PCV hose and the breather hose that goes to the air cleaner, and I've made wooden plugs that are forced in there so no water will get in. And now it comes time to start stripping the rest of it. So we're going to take off the accessories, take off the starter, pull off the spark plugs and stuff. We're going to get all of that out of the way so we can properly clean the engine. Now let's take a look at what we're going to use to clean the engine. So here's our supplies. Once again, we've pulled out the wire brushes and stuff we used on the mag wheels. I've got a couple of other styles of wire brush. I have a scraper that we use. We have a selection of scrapers. We've got our drill to run all that stuff with. And a couple of cans of engine degreaser, as well as a pile of old rags. Now, old rags. These are going to get dirty. They're going to wind up getting thrown out. We want to dispose of them properly because they're going to be full of cleaner and dirt and garbage. The other thing that they're going to be full of
is Varsol. Don't use gasoline. Gasoline's got all kinds of additives in it that really wreck your hands, can poison you, extremely flammable. This stuff's still flammable. Don't drink it. Follow the directions, but it's a great cleaner. And along with some old paint brushes, we're going to be using it to get the engine all cleaned up so that we're ready to go to do the painting. And along the way, we're going to use spray paint that I've already got on the shelf. As you saw when we were doing the mags and stuff, I've got cans of that stuff lying around. Might as well use it up. We're going to pretty the beast up and get it ready so when the time comes, it's ready to drop in the hole. So while I get the rest of my stuff together, we'll take a break and then come back and start the process. Okay, now these are some of the tools you're going to need over above cleaning supplies to strip all the garbage off the engine. So wrenches, sockets, knives, screwdrivers, stuff like that. Stuff you got in your toolbox, nothing you got to buy. And the whole deal being is you got to take all this stuff off. So speaking of taking off, we've already started. We've pulled some heater lines. We've pulled some other bits and pieces. We've detached the wiring from the alternator. Notice it's marked alternator. Now if you've been doing this a long time, you don't need to mark everything. But if you're just starting out, it's a real good idea to do just that. Make sure everything's marked as it comes off. So you can see we've done that for the alternator. We've done it for oil pressure. We've done it with distributor wires. We've got some more distributor wires to do. We're going to mark all this stuff as it comes off to show you how it's done. And as we go along, we're going to save everything. Now what I like to do, you can see here, is put nuts, bolts back wherever I can. Wherever I can't, and for other things like clips and loose nuts, bolts, screws, I have a container that it all goes into. And here, with the hoses, the wiring, and everything else, you betcha, box marked with exactly what's in it. That way, when I go back to put it together, I'm not scrambling looking for stuff. So we're going to keep hacking away here. And you can see a set of wire cutters, and keep disassembling, and we'll be back when we get a little farther done. Okay, it's taken about a half an hour. We've got all the wiring off and all the hoses, unless I find one I missed. And we've tagged everything that needs tagged. It's all going in the box. And notice I got a drop sheet under the engine. I'm not a clean freak. It's just a messy workplace sucks. And there's all our extra nuts and bolts and clamps and stuff going in. So now we're going to start on taking off the accessories and brackets. Okay? Now, the other thing you'll notice is as I've gone along, I'm plugging stuff. The last thing we want to do after taking the time to pickle this engine and do it right is to wind up getting water into the cylinders, the lifter gallery, or anything. So whereas I'm not plugging things like heater hoses, don't care if it gets in there, okay, or the rad hoses, I don't want water getting in the engine. So as we go, things are getting plugged up left, right, and center so that I don't have to deal with problems later. Now we're just going to keep going. And the trick is we're going to try and take off as much as possible the accessories like the power steering pump, like the alternator, like the starter, way under here, in units. And for instance, with things like the starter on a Chevy, they're shimmed. So keep the shims together with the starter. Okay, and as we take it apart, we'll either put the bolts in our bolt bin or we'll screw them back in where they came off so that we can find them again. So we'll talk to you in a while. I'm going to take a break for lunch and then get back at it. Okay gang, we have all the front end accessories stripped off. We have the brackets down here. There's the alternator. Power steering pump is in a bucket draining. And now all that's left is to take off the plug wires, and then we're ready to start cleaning. Now notice what I've done on the plug wires. I've numbered them all. And if you haven't done this before, it's a really good idea. Or if you're really lazy like me and don't want to fight with them later and try and remember, it's a cheat way of being able to get this stuff apart and get it back together and making it run again. So I'm going to keep chiseling away. We're going to pop the plug wires off, and then it'll be time to get into cleaning.
Is it flashing red?
Yep.
Okay. Hey everyone, we have a new cameraman on site. My son's giving us a hand
Not that
while he's
new.
trying to learn something. Anyhow, as you can see, we've got all the accessories stripped off and all the way down. Now we're into the heavy cleaning. And our big tools for heavy cleaning are a scraper, chisel, and a brush. So, what we need to do is we have to go over this whole engine and get as much of the dirt off from the start as we can. Now,
And there's a lot of dirt.
there's a lot of dirt. Now we're doing this before we put on the degreaser, because if you get the bulk of the dirt off before you spray on the degreaser, then the degreaser is going to work better. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So we work the area as much as we can with the chisel and the scraper. Then we go back in with the brush and we give it a real good cleaning as best we can. And this is a steel bristle brush. They're real cheap. I had a few lying around, so we're using these right now. And you get as much of the garbage and gunk and crap off as you possibly can. And the whole key here is, the cleaner you get the engine before you paint it, the more garbage you get off, the better it's going to look. So we really want to make every effort to get every square inch of this thing as clean as possible before we put on the degreaser. Then we're going to come back and do it all again, and we'll keep doing it until we get the whole engine as clean as we possibly can. So we're going to spend the rest of our Friday night on this to get it as clean as possible.
I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
No.
And once we get it as clean as we possibly can, we're going to soak it down in the degreaser that I showed you in the initial shot. So we're going to keep scrubbing away. We've also got a big heavy wire brush plus a couple other scrapers of different sizes to get into all the nooks and crannies. So till next time, have fun. We'll see you soon. Okay, we've been over the whole thing with the scrapers and the chisel and the wire brush. Now we got to go to the next step before we start worrying about using the engine degreaser. And that part is we're going to use some good old-fashioned solvent. Solvent, Varsol, call it what you will. And what we want to do is we want to go over the whole engine and scrub it as well as we can with brushes, like you can see here. And the coarser the brush, the better. And this will get the stuff, the remainder of the stuff that was there off as we go along. Now, again, I can't stress enough, this is just, the cleaner you get it, the more prep you do, the better this is going to turn out. So we want to work hard at getting this right. And it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's what you got to do a good job. Now, if you just want to get it sort of clean and splash it, it'll probably look okay for a while. But I don't like doing things halfway. I like doing them right, because that way it stands up. And this is a good running engine that can last a long time once it's installed in a new vehicle. And I don't want to have to worry about painting it all over again or starting to look crappy once we get it done. So you got to go right from the bottom up or top down, whichever you prefer. But you got to go over the whole thing, every inch, to get everything you can cleaned off as much as you can. And don't be afraid to use the wire brush, dip it in the solvent, get it in there when you find a spot you missed, give it a darn good clean like this, and then go back over it again with the brush. And keep doing that until you get the engine really, really clean. Like I said, the cleaner, the better, because it'll look better when the paint goes on.
But nobody's even going to see the engine.
Sure they are. Go to a car show, you like to show it off, you're going to see it, you're going to know, and it's all about the pride of the build and doing it right. You'll know, and other people who are car guys are going to appreciate it as well. So do a good job while you're at it.
But aren't car guys an endangered species?
No, not at all. We're getting worse instead of better. Now, this is going to take about another hour or two for us. Then we're going to call it a night and let it dry overnight. Tomorrow morning we'll hit it with the engine degreaser and we'll start scrubbing again. So until tomorrow, which will be Saturday, have a good what's left of your night and keep scrubbing. Hey everyone, morning. So after doing all that work, I came out this morning expecting to hit it with the degreaser and brought some extra light in so I could see what was going on, and discovered we missed a whole bunch of stuff, or at least I missed a whole bunch of stuff. So I spent the last hour or so going back over the whole engine with our brushes, wheels, sanding flapper, and our electric drill. You got to get it as clean as you can before you hit it with the degreaser. So I've been re-scraping, re-cleaning, going all the way over it to get rid of all the crap that's been hiding on it for time immemorial. Now, a chunk of this is my fault. The engine was dirtier than I remembered, and I expected a little much, but that's okay. We're dealing with it. And you'll notice I've started masking stuff off as I get it, the area around it clean. That's so when we're done and we start squirting paint, we start doing a really good job. The other thing we'll be doing is taking off the exhaust manifolds when we go to paint. I'm leaving them on so we don't get muck and water and stuff in the exhaust ports. Same reason you have the carburetor capped in this end so nothing gets in. Remember we talked about that? But we got to take them off in order to get a good paint job on it. Now, it's never going to look like a brand new engine, but it can sure look a heck of a lot better. Look how much of a change already. It's starting to look clean. So we're going to keep up the work for the next while, and probably another hour or so. Then we're going to hit it with the degreaser. We'll come back for that. And then we're going to wash it down one more time for solvent. So we're burning up our Saturday on this one. We're getting there. And when we're done, it's going to look good. But again, anytime you're dealing with paint, it's all about the preparation. The better you prep it, the cleaner you get it, the better the paint will be. So we're going to carry on, and we'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half since we last chatted, and we've been over the whole thing again with the wire brushes and stuff like we were talking about. We're getting ready to throw the degreaser on. Now the steps from here are going to be spray it down with the degreaser, let it do its work, got to leave it for an hour or two. Then we're going to come back and wash the motor down with clean solvent, and keep carrying on from there. Once it's dry from being washed with the clean solvent, then we can finally get to painting after wiping it down. Now, while we're waiting for things to dry, we got all those parts. And we're going to take a nice cream bucket with some solvent in it and all of our brushes and rags, and we're going to be cleaning all that stuff up so it can all be painted as once we get to that stage. So, for the moment, we're going to back up a little,
And I want to talk a little bit about personal protection equipment when you're doing projects like this. So, I'm a nag about safety. I've made it this long because I am a nag about safety. So let's talk about when you're doing these projects. First things first, anytime you're handling solvents or cleaners, gloves. Okay, I use these neoprene ones, keeps my hands pretty. The bigger thing is, it keeps your hands looking human. Number 2, safety goggles. Yeah, I know, I have my safety glasses, so it might not look that I'm wearing them, but I always am. And the big thing with this is when you're using wire brushes and cleaners and stuff like that is to keep the crap out of your eyes. You only got one set of eyes, so you got to protect them. So, big deal. Anytime you're working on anything that's got flying debris involved, like we've been doing here, glasses on. Last but not least, a mask. Again, we're dealing with chemicals, we're dealing with stuff like that, and I know I'm bad when I'm on camera, I don't have my mask on, but off camera I do. I find it really hard to talk with the mask on, so for the short shots, I don't use it. But when I'm working on this stuff, I do. So, personal protection equipment at all times. Big deal. Something I pound into my kid and the other young people I work with. So I want to get it into your head too. Now the engine is pretty much there. The degreaser is going to get rid of some more stuff. And the masking we've already done is going to keep stuff from getting damaged, which is what we want. So we're going to soak it down, then it's going to take a couple hours. While that's going on, we're going to clean up the other parts like we talked about. And at the same time, once that's done, we wash it down with solvent again, let her dry, and then we'll get into painting. I've already picked out some colors. All the stuff I'm using today is off the shelf. So things like valve covers, I haven't gone completely nuts on these. I want them to look good to show you how it's done, but I haven't gone crazy because I've got a whole chrome kit for this engine sitting up on the shelf. And when I find a project that I want to put it in, I'm going to put the chrome kit on it. The other thing is, the intake is going to end up having to come off and probably the timing cover and the harmonic, because when I find that project I want to put it in, it's more than likely going to get a cam, it's going to get an intake, and it's going to get a set of inexpensive roller tip rockers. Why all that on the 305? Number 1, I can. The engine doesn't owe me anything. Number 2, a little more power. If you go on to Richard Holden's site, he does a really good test on 305 versus 302 from the 80s. And you can get some pretty snotty power out of these things. No, it's never going to be like big block, but you can make it a lot more fun to drive for just a couple bucks. So, here on Real Builds, we're going to step away again and start squirting some cleaner. When you're spraying this stuff, I like to work from the top down. And you want to soak it pretty well. Now again, normally I would have a mask on for this, but I can't talk well, so I'm not going to do this too long. We're going to soak it right down. And this is just an off-the-shelf cleaner I had on, kicking around the shop. And we're just going to soak the whole sucker down and wash it down with solvent again. So, we've started. You know what we're doing? Working top down with our personal protection equipment on. And we'll see you in a little bit. Hey guys, how you doing? So, we've cleaned everything up. We've washed it all back down with solvent. We've let everything dry. Everything's in pretty good shape. I've taken the liberty of painting the oil pan and part of the harmonic balancer already, so I've masked those off. And I've masked off all the sensors and stuff. Now, when it comes to masking, this is just a used engine. So all we're doing is making it look good, not like a lump. So you do as much as you want. In this case, because I don't have enough paint of one color to paint everything, I'm going to kind of doll it up a little bit. But in the end, it's still just a used engine that we're doing something with, and it's a weekend project. So
Make sure everything is super clean. Again, anytime you're dealing with paint, preparation's everything. So the cleaner, the better, the smoother, the better. I haven't gone crazy on the valve covers because, as I said, I have a chrome set. I haven't pulled the harmonic balancer. I've just painted it in place, and I'll paint behind it as best I can because I've got a chrome timing cover. So when the time comes and I'm going to install this engine, I'm probably going to put the chrome goodies on it, maybe stuff a cam in it, a couple other things. But for demonstration purposes, I want to give you a good look at what we're into. So we've masked things off, cleaned them up as well as possible so the paint's going to have a good stick. We've double checked everything. We'll double check once more. And then we're going to start squirting some paint. So colors we're using today, I'm using some cast finish because I got a half a can. I've got a couple partial cans of aluminum. I've got, for the block, a blue. And for the oil pan and the accessories, I've got lots of gloss black, so we're going to use that. But you don't have to use the same colors I am by any stretch of the imagination. Let your mind go wild. I'm just using up what I've got in doing this demonstration for you. So let's look at what we've done with the other parts.
So right down here, we have all the other bits and pieces, all cleaned up and set to go. And we're going to show the different methods on painting those. Aside from the actual masking, you'll notice I've got a selection of pieces of cardboard kicking around that I'm going to use for masking as I go. Again, we're not building a show engine, we're just cleaning up what we got so it'll look good when we get around to stuffing it in. The other part of this is anybody who's got the bright idea of thinking that they can paint up an engine and call it a rebuilt, you should go back to the where to start section because in there I go pretty in depth on buying used parts and taking somebody with you who knows what you're looking at. Any car guy who looks at this engine is going to know it's a painted up used engine. They'll appreciate you took the time to clean it up and paint it up, but it's still a used engine. And anybody who knows what they're looking at is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So, anytime you're buying an engine, somebody says it's a rebuilt, if you don't know, take somebody with you, they'll clue you in real fast. And besides, car guys are supposed to be the good guys, not the jerks, so let's not go down that path. Also, when we're doing this, we're going to be using our spray mask, safety goggles, and gloves. All through cleaning, I've been talking about that. Personal protection equipment's important. So, we're going to get started. I'm going to show you the stuff in shots so that you can get a good idea what we're doing. And remember, anytime you're spray painting, do it in light coats. Smooth, light coats. So, smooth, light coats, multiple times, gives you a nice finish. It dries nice, it looks really good. When you layer it on, you get drips, you get runs, you get all kinds of stuff. So we want to do this intelligently, and we're going to do it with smooth, light coats. So get ready, because we're going to go. Okay. All right, we're going to get started here. We're going to be using aluminum finish on the intake manifold, so we're going to start up there. You can see I've already got my cardboard template there to try and keep as much as I can off the valve covers. I like to start with the lightest colors first. That way, if I make a goof, I can fix it when I'm putting a darker color over. And again, smooth, light coats. So we've got our personal safety equipment on, and we'll get at it. Now, like I said, smooth, light coats. We're going to come back and do it all a couple of times anyway. So let's do it right, make it look as good as we can. And again, it's just a used engine, so we're cleaning it up. But would you rather have that ugly, dark, greasy shape that we started with going into your car, or something that looks a little nicer? I think most of us would like something that looks a little nicer, a little better as it goes in. And you don't need to layer the paint on. Smooth and light works best. So as you can see, going along here, And again, this is just the stock intake. Just a little 160 horse 305. It's, I looked it up on my tag. This one had 115,000 miles on it. Ran real good, 130, 140 compression, so no issues there. Just a nice little motor. And its original destiny was for a driver for my wife, a little S10, but hey, somebody offered me a bunch of money. It went away. And that gave us something to do a weekend project with. So you can see how we're going along. And we'll come back and redo that. Now we're also going to do the cylinder heads in aluminum, just so it looks kind of cool. And to do that, we're going to use our template to keep it off the valve covers as much as logical, and just give a light coat. Now you see I pulled the spark plugs. I don't think personally that a little bit of aluminum paint is going to hurt anything going on in the cylinders. And before I put the plugs back in, I'm going to be giving them another shot of lubricant, because if you're going to have an engine in storage, you need to keep it oiled, you need to keep it turned over. So we'll take the time to do that. Now it's amazing how a little bit of paint can make such a big difference in how an engine looks. But that's the whole idea with this, is make something that looks decent. In my case, before I put it away. For a lot of you who are building the first project using a used engine, it's a great way to just make your low buck project look a little better. It doesn't cost much except time, and makes a huge difference in how she looks under the hood. So again, smooth light coats. We're going to come back and do this all again because we want it to look good. And that's with the masking and the cleaning. Everything is about preparation. So on that note, I'm not going to bore you while I paint. We'll come back when we start to do the block. But you can see already how much of a difference a little bit of paint makes, how much better it looks. And we're going to do a couple coats on each. So we'll be back in a bit when we start getting to the block. Okay, it's been about a half an hour. We just put a second coat on the aluminum, as you can see. And it's looking pretty sharp. So that's 2 coats, and it's gone on really well. So I think that'll be more than enough for this particular example. We're going to let this dry for about a half an hour, then come back and start doing the block and the other pieces. Now there was just enough paint in that can to also let us do the alternator. And it's looking pretty fine now as well. Now notice, I mask off all electrical connections, and the reason for that is it keeps hassles from happening later. And on this step, we've already done a coat of black, and you'll see on the starter, I used my cardboard to mask it off and get a little silver on there too, which pretty much killed the can. So, till we come back with the blue, that's it from Real Builds. Talk to you real quick. Okay, we're back, and now it's time to start a little painting on the block. We're going to show you this section, and then we're going to carry on. Again, you don't need to watch me and get bored to tears by the work I'm doing, but I want to give you a good idea of what we're doing. And remember, super clean, multiple light coats with the aluminum finish on the heads and the intake. We did 3 coats before we ran out, and on the block we're going to be doing at least 2, or until we run out. So again, we're going to use our template to protect the work we've already done. You can see I've masked off the oil pan just because I'm lazy. And now we're going to start squirting some paint. Now you'll find if you come from above, not below, it'll make it a lot easier to keep the paint where you want it to go.
keep it off the stuff you've already worked on. Just like that. Now again, we're not going to be perfect here. The idea isn't to be perfect, just good and make it look a hell of a lot better than it did. So that's what we're going to keep doing as we go along in this project. And you can see how a little bit of effort has gone a long ways already. So we're going to keep it up at our end, you keep it up at yours, and we'll be back in a little bit here at Real Builds. Okay, we finished the first coat of the blue, and considering it's just something that was sitting on the shelf, it's not a bad blue. And you can see it's making a huge difference in the way our engine looks. Big time difference. And the whole goal, of course, is to wind up with a good looking used engine that when you install it will complement your vehicle. Now, again, this isn't something you have to do, but it's a nice touch, and especially if you're building your first ride, you're using a used engine, why not take a weekend, do it right, make it look cool? All right. At the same time, we've gone back and given our accessories a second coat. So when they bolt on, it'll do more and more to complement the look of the engine. So while this dries, we're going to depart and go have some lunch, and then we'll be back to do a second coat on the blue and start playing with the valve covers. Talk to you in a bit. Okay, I thought we'd do a quick sneak peek. She's drying right now. We still have the carburetor to do, but I wanted to give you a look at what we've managed to accomplish so far. And big difference from what it was to where it is. Now, what's cool about this is it's still a used engine. There's no two ways around it. Like I said, I corrected myself. It actually has 115,000 miles on it. I was wrong. Had to go look it up in my book. I like to keep track of this stuff so I can correct myself when I make an error. But what a great difference from the way it looked before to the way it looked now. And now it's a good runner. So if I have a project that I want to stuff it into, it's no big deal. It's ready to drop in the hole, and it looks pretty darn good when the smoke clears. Now, all the other bits and pieces have been paid attention to as well. You can see here we have the motor mounts and spacers. We have the pulleys, brackets, starter's been touched up, dipstick tube, brackets. Even the alternator has had a belly rub so that when it goes back together, all of this stuff looks good, which means I don't have to do it when the time comes. Often when you're building a project, like we did with the earlier segment on redoing alloy wheels, if you do something every weekend, pretty soon you got all the parts ready. And it takes so much time out of doing a build. And of course, we also have to remember to use our personal protection equipment. In this case, it was goggles, face mask, and gloves. And we're over a drop cloths. And I had someone send me an email and say, what do you do with all the solvent? Well, I don't throw it out. Most of my solvent's recycled. I have 2-3 different jugs going at any given time. And the stuff that's dirty gets set aside until it settles out, and then it's drained off. So we waste very little here. Part of it is, yes, I am somewhat of an environmentalist, and part of it is, I mean, unbelievably cheap. So anything I can recycle and reuse, like the paint today. The reason we didn't just blast it one color was I didn't have enough paint to do one color. So for this demonstration, we used what I had on hand, and I think it turned out pretty good. We still have to finish tidying up the carburetor and giving it a shot.
Now, when I put the accessories back on, I am going to put the pulleys on. I'm going to put the alternator on and all those brackets. I'm not going to put the power steering on because I don't know what this is going to wind into, so I could very well be wasting my time. The other piece that's not going to go on are the exhaust manifolds. They're god-awful, and anything that is going to go in the hole is going to have headers or ram's heads, which I haven't found yet. And when we get to that, we'll talk more about it. But for now, that gives you a really good idea where we're at. And the next time you see it, we'll have it all assembled. Okay, here's our engine with the masking stripped off. We've painted the carburetor with a cast iron finish just to make it look nice and clean. We know it works, so why mess with it? And we're going to let it dry for a few hours before we start assembly. And we have all the accessories ready to go back on, so that shouldn't take too horribly long. And then we'll be back. I just thought you'd like a sneak peek at what she's going to look like. Talk to you soon. Well, we're back, and we've finished all the assembly that we're going to do on it. Doesn't have the power steering pump because I said I wasn't going to put it on, or the exhaust manifolds because they're not going to get reused. But everything else is there pretty much. So let's take a look at exactly what we accomplished on our little 305. Now again, this is just a good used engine. Nothing dramatic. It's a 305 from an 84, 115,000 miles, 184,000 K for those people who are into the K world. But we took it from a pretty ugly lump into a pretty darn good looking little engine. Now, it took us a weekend. Didn't cost me anything. I had the paint. We had solvent. We had the cleaning tools. We had the shop equipment. So we just did it. It had been sitting in the corner for a couple of years. I'd bought it for another project that didn't happen. Sold the vehicle before they ever got the engine installed. So the goal was to clean it up and get it ready for use. And we have. And it's cost us a couple days work, not a big deal. And it looks really good. When you compare it to the lump we started with, different game altogether. So great way to spend a weekend. Knock it off, get it done. And again, I bought no parts for this. Those are the same plug wires and everything else, just all cleaned up. The paint I had on the shelf, and the rest was just work. So you can do it too. That's the idea of doing these videos, is to pass on how you can do the same thing that I'm showing and make a neat ride. So if you're doing your old pickup truck, and you've got the engine in or out, because you can do this in the engine bay as well, you can make your engine just as pretty, and it makes the whole vehicle better. Not only that, it makes you feel good, because look at what we accomplished with a short weekend worth of work. So until the next time, take care from Real Builds. We'll talk to you soon.